Winter and spring of anime in 2021 was pretty damn amazing. It brought some new fantastic and groundbreaking shows. We finally got a new season of Attack on Titan, which was just mind-blowing.
Hey man, what the f*** is that flying through the sky?
Holy shit, they actually just airdropped the squad of Titans.
Wow.
The new season has also brought us the new ReZero, Log Horizon, Promised Neverland, in addition to amazing new originals like the masterpiece that was X-Armed. This is single-handedly the best piece of animation ever. Changed my mind. There's just so much damn good anime. The list just goes on and on, so you would think there would be a great show for everyone. But there's one thing you may have noticed throughout the recent seasons. Where the fuck is all the good ecchi anime? You may also say, how about Redo of Healer? But wait, Redo of Healer is a hentai, I swear to god. They literally have a segment on episode 2 on the censored version where it's just one frame panning down for at least 2 minutes, just because they can't show what's actually happening on screen.
Gary! I was just looking for the sports channel, Gary.
So I'm bringing you some of my recommendations on what I think are some good anime with some ecchi in it, but done skillfully. So grab a pair of headphones, put them on, lock your room door, grab your cup of Kill Kill coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice. These were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect little girl. But Professor Utonium accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction.
Cocaine.
Oh, pitiful shadow lost in the darkness. Oh, evil spirit born of those drifting between heaven and earth.
This is Panty, the oldest of the Anarchy sisters. She says and does whatever's on her mind, including partaking in her favorite activity. How do I say this? Being a slut. Yes, fellas, she loves some of that. But don't just take it from me. The voice actors said so themselves.
Panty is a giant angel.
Panty is a hooker. H-O-O-K-E-R. Hooker, straight up word.
Panty is a slut. She's a slut. She's just a slut.
F*** off. Don't talk to me until I've had my goddamn sugar.
And this is Stocking. She's the other Anarchy sister and has a huge sweet tooth, but for some reason, oddly, just doesn't put on any weight. And together, they're trying to regain their place back in heaven because they were kicked out for, you could probably guess why. To do this, they need to defeat monsters, also called ghosts in their world, to earn heaven coins, which will eventually buy their way back into heaven. So you might think this is a fairly normal anime premise, but little do you know that they actually fight off ghosts with their lingerie. Yes, I swear you heard that right.
From whence you came. Repent, you motherfucker!
So you might be thinking, Miku, why is this even a thing? To celebrate the successful broadcast of their last show, Gurren Lagann, the studio staff went on a trip of rest and relaxation, and a bunch of authors, writers, and animators sitting around and sitting drunk came up with most of the details of the show, and it actually became a thing.
You remember how in Gurren Lagann we decided not to put barely any clothes on anyone? Well, for Panty and Stocking, let's just make him take it all off.
Fellas, lucky number 7, it's up to
So the best way I can explain Panty and Stocking is it's pretty much Powerpuff Girls on crack. It has pretty much every sex joke in the book, but the thing is the creators and writers went over the top in writing every single joke that's in the show. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but the characters and the interactions that they have together make it a very fun and interesting watch, as well as the eye-catching, colorful animation and art style, and the amazing fight and action sequences on the show. Panty and Stocking gets an 8 out of 10.
やっと面白くなった。
Don't lose your way.
Next on the list is Kill la Kill. It takes place in Honnoji Academy, a fictional high school in Tokyo Bay that is dominated by its fearsome student council. The council members wear special uniforms called Goku uniforms. No, not the one you're thinking, that grant them superhuman abilities, and even more power when they take off more of their uniform. You might be wondering again, why is this a thing? But I'm sure as all you know, our Lord and Savior Giga once said, if you set your mind to it, you can jack off to anything.
Hold up, that was the wrong quote. And there's no way he actually said that.
Bro, if you set your mind to it, you can jack off to anything.
Bro, what? What I meant to say is, in shonen, if you aren't losing clothes, then you probably aren't getting stronger. That's just how anime works.
So in a quest to obtain more power to avenge her father, our main character Ryuko Matoi transfers to the academy to get leads on her father's killer as well as the whereabouts of the other half of the scissor that she uses to fight with. Ryuko is a very interesting main protagonist, and it's not often that we see these female leads with very strong attributes, especially in this kind of series where it's heavily action-packed and filled with its male counterparts. But I think Studio Trigger has done something amazing, new, and refreshing here with its main character Ryuko. Ryuko is fierce and stubborn, she fears very little, which is demonstrated when she directly and disrespectfully addresses Satsuki Kiryuin, the president of the student council. Although she does have a soft side, especially when shown with her best friend Mako and her family, she tends to be more calm, polite, and easily flattered. Mako is an interesting character herself. She's a hyperactive, carefree, and loving girl who lives with her family in the slums of Hono City. She's that stereotypical, airheaded character that you can find in a lot of animes, but genuinely, she just wants to support her friends and family. She spends her days as a no-star student at Honnoji Academy and almost instantly befriends our main character Ryuko and takes quite a liking to her. Then we have Satsuki Kiryuin, the definition of power and pride within a character, our antagonist and head of the student council. Satsuki is a natural-born leader, extremely intelligent, calculating, and patient, while simultaneously unwavering and iron-fisted. And in spite of her pride, Satsuki is shown to be pragmatic and determined, willing to cast aside pride and using whatever means necessary in order to secure victory, even if it threatens her life. And she genuinely cares about the Elite Four who serve under her. So after picking a fight with a council member where Ryuko ends up being defeated, she stumbles across a sailor uniform that gives her the power to overcome her enemies and give her answers that she seeks. This is all really there is for the basis of the plot. But I think this show is favored because of its lovable characters that are easily memorable, its crazy and overemphasized art style even with the low budget that the studios was given, as well as great soundtracks during crucial moments in the show. But the main reason why I think Kill la Kill is genius is that the fact the show itself is a parody of many overused tropes in recent animes. Over-sexualized, provocative clothing, and fanservice for no reason? Yes. Student council is overpowered? Yes. School system that emphasizes uniforms? Yes. Story about revenge? Also yes. The most astounding part about all of this is that Kill la Kill doesn't just adhere to the common tropes itself for shits and giggles. It actually takes these tropes and literally makes them its plot. This is Kill la Kill, where fanservice is plot, style is substance, and every episode plays out like the finale. Kill la Kill gets an 8.5 out of 10. Next on the list is Mushoku Tensei, one of my personal new favorites. Mushoku Tensei is an isekai where in typical isekai fashion, our main character gets truck-cooned into a fantasy world. Although this main character isn't the same as other main characters in a lot of isekais. He doesn't have some sort of overpowered ability, or he's just not overpowered as a character. He has to start from ground zero as a baby and work back up to where he was in his current life. Although it seems that that's not what this main character is trying to do. He doesn't want to go back to his past world where he was an ugly, scummy,
low life of society who was pretty much forced from society to be a shut-in because he got bullied in high school. So with this new opportunity given to our main character known as Rudius Grey Rat, he wants to make the best of the family, friends, and life that he's been given in this new world. This is essentially Rudius's redemption story. I always love myself a redemption story, and this premise may sound great straight off the bat, but then we go into how imperfect of a character Rudius actually was in his old world and how those bad traits carry on to this new world. Let's just say he's the type of guy who skipped out on his family's funeral to go binge and jack off to redo of healer. He leeches off his parents and lives as a NEET with no ambitions whatsoever. Also, not to mention the fact as soon as he was born, he was appreciating his mother's rack, as well as roaming around his house hunting for his maid's panties. Oh man, that really hurt the voice out loud. So yeah, Rudius is undeniably a pervert in a child's body, which is why I would say he's the main factor into making or breaking the show for most viewers. Although his character wasn't created with the intention of being liked. He's far from the perfect character, and a lot of viewers actually forget what they're getting into when watching the show. It's important to understand what Mushoku essentially is, a redemption arc with an imperfect character. We can't expect him to change as a person right away, even though he literally became a new person. It's going to take time to change, as his trauma paused his mental development, which is the source of his problems as a character. Problems that are part of the story. Although I don't blame a lot of people for just not watching the show because a lot of questionable stuff does actually happen that even I won't try to defend.
ルーデウス、君にあまり目立たれると困るんだが、まあ今日は特別な日だから許すとしよう。ベッドに連れ込むなら否認はしてくれよ。
But on a real note, I don't think the show exhibits fan service just to have fan service. I think it does a good job displaying the realism in the current world that they live in, as well as supporting the fact that Rudius has this major flaw of how he looks at people. Every time Rudius thinks about reverting back to his old ways, he's reminded instantly that this is reality. These are real people he cares about, and not just some character on an edoge that he's played in his past life. I highly recommend watching Mother's Basement's video on this topic, as it explains more in depth why this is the case. Putting all that aside, it's not just Rudius who's a pervert. Pretty much every character in the show is so damn horny. Just watch this segment introducing our main cast. Now that that's out of the way, the anime's cast are actually really lovable characters with really good character development. They all play a major role in giving our main character a healthy support system to grow better as a person. Although, like Rudius, these characters are imperfect beings as well. But we're not talking about being the same trash tier Rudius is. If I had to rank how shitty the characters are, this is how it would look like. Rudius' dad got some issues. You know, he's cool and all, he's a great swordsman, but he's got some issues. Eris, she also has some issues, but she's a pretty cool character. She's really strong, she picks up things quickly. She's a stereotypical tsundere character in the show, but she's not too one-dimensional. She actually has some other attributes to her. I think I'm gonna put her in B tier. Rudius' mom is a pretty good character. She really doesn't have any faults on the show, but not much character development. She's also a great magician. I think I'll put her in A tier. I personally really like her. And we have Roxy, the lolly witch magician teacher. I really like witches in anime, so I'm a bit biased in this one. S tier, easy. We have Rudius. That's we don't even need to talk about that. That's trash, obviously. Sylphie, Rudius' childhood friend, we'll put her in B tier with Eris, but under Eris. She doesn't have too much character to her. She's just a sweet girl. She also picks up magic really fast. Those are my ratings of the characters. I think that's fairly acceptable. Moving on. I've seen a lot of animes in my lifetime, so I think it's a compliment when I say that Mushoku Tensei has done something for me that other animes hasn't been able to do. Every episode makes me feel like I'm in an actual cinema watching a movie. The animation is absolutely gorgeous and it feels like every scene is like a painting. The world building is really in depth and makes it feel like it can be realistic, as well as the sound design and the opening sequence just complementing the story and the show. For all these reasons, Mushoku holds a special place in my heart as an anime, and I believe it's the new standard for isekai animes in general. I really want to call this a masterpiece, but the main character really holds me back in doing so. I give Mushoku Tensei a 9 out of 10. And in number 2, I bring you Kono Subarashi Sekai ni Shukufuku wo Kurenai Densetsu, or Konosuba for short, regarded to be my favorite comedy anime of all time, and so good in my opinion that my entire brand takes inspiration from the show. I'm bringing you a show that not only I think subjectively is the funniest anime I've seen while having many moments that made me actually laugh out loud, but it also includes a cast of the best, worst group of waifus with a crazy dynamic. While I personally think most comedy animes are a miss for me more than a hit, I think this isekai has crafted a perfect formula in order to make the show genuinely funny while staying interesting. The majority of comedy anime, in my opinion, like Sakamoto Desu Ka, which actually gave me plenty of laughs as well, has a very funny punchline or joke that makes it very interesting to watch at first, but it just eventually ends up becoming dry and added to the void, which is my watch later list. Instead of making it seem like the characters are written for the sole sake of portraying jokes, Konosuba makes it feel as though the jokes come naturally, as the characters feel surprisingly real. That's not to say that the characters are ordinary by any means. What Konosuba did here was taking typical anime tropes from other animes and completely flipping them and boosting their character traits on the borderline of ridiculousness. We have Sato Kazuma, who's ironically probably the most normal out of the group. Like literally any other isekai MC, Kazuma is a shut-in who rarely interacts with society and spends most of his times inside playing video games and watching anime. He's sarcastic, cynical, and blunt, especially towards his teammates. And unfortunately for Kazuma, when he was reincarnated, the RNG gods were not on his side, as he ended up choosing the goddess Aqua that was in charge of his reincarnation to take to this new world because she was being pissy. And I kinda don't blame him for it. So in hand with Aqua and his insanely high luck status, he really doesn't have any other special power. Well, that's unless you're counting his steal ability. So yeah, that's Kazuma. In this new world, Kazuma is tasked to defeat the Demon King as he starts looking for his teammates, and to his luck, these teammates are kind of useless. Of course, we have Aqua, who is kind of forced to come along. Aqua is a self-centered, useless tsundere who's so full of herself, but does show up when you need her to, who for some godforsaken reason doesn't wear panties. And despite Aqua actually being a goddess that a lot of people worship in this new world, no one actually thinks that Aqua is that goddess just because of how shitty of a character she is. Also, she's pretty much useless unless the party is facing the undead or some type of demon race. Her power as a goddess only works against them and not really anyone else. Then we have Megumin, everyone's favorite lolly magician. Let's just say she has a little case of Chunibyo syndrome and is in love with explosions. So much in fact that the only stat she levels is her explosion magic. Though her dedication to her craft kinda makes me start to fall in love with explosion magic as well. She's quite literally a one-hit wonder as she's left paralyzed and useless after only using one spell a day. She refuses to learn any other type of magic, routinely flying in the face of all logic to protect her explosion magic. Because of this, no party will take her, even though she is part of the most powerful clan of wizards, and she was only allowed into the party because she blackmailed Kazuma. She has completely no self-control when it comes to explosion magic. For example, there was a time in the show where she just continuously blew up one of the Demon King General's living quarters every single day just for practice. Despite all her shortcomings, Megumin is acknowledged by Kazuma as having the most common sense out of the group. She's actually pretty intelligent and is legitimately pretty good at magic, even though she limits herself to one spell. Megumin also does show genuine love and affection and loyalty to her friends. Then there's Darkness, the entire reason this show's in this list in the first place. Darkness is of the Crusaders class with an aura of pride and nobility at first glance. However, despite her initial appearance, on the inside she's a complete masochist. While she does want to protect others, her masochistic urges are what ultimately drives her to commit many of her heroic acts throughout the series, resulting in many onlookers viewing her as a role model for supposed selflessness, whereas that's not how she actually is. Throughout the story, she becomes progressively more and more open about her true intentions and her character, to the point where she blatantly reveals her reason for becoming a crusader was, in quotes, in hopes of being sexually tortured by the Demon King, and that her ideal husband is an abusive alcoholic who would force her to sell her body for money. What the fuck, Darkness? What the fuck? So these are the 4 that, in my opinion, make the most interesting and funny dynamic of characters that I've yet to see. Even though the majority of our cast is useless and flawed most of the time, they all have their moments and actually truly care about each other's well-being, and you can be expected to also have more sentimental and emotional parts to the show.
どうした？
これからは足手まといにならない魔法使いになります。
俺に上級魔法取得のボタンを押してくれって？
卒業です。爆裂魔法は封印するんです。
はい。
どうも。
なあめぐみん、ちょっと一発撃ってくれよ。
は？
今日はまだ1日1爆裂やってないだろ。
私の最後の爆裂魔法。さよなら。エクスプロージョン！これは
I hope you're able to see how much emotion, effort, and sometimes fun the voice actors have getting into character. On top of that, their synergy is just as good in real life than the synergy the characters have within the show. And funnily enough, they even act sorta like the characters in real life. Take for example Jun Fukushima, who voices Kazuma, and Ria Takahashi, who voices Megumi. So yeah, before I go on 20 more minutes just ranting about the show, I'm gonna end it here. And you could probably guess that I definitely highly recommend Konosuba as a top tier anime that in my opinion is a must watch. And I would love to hear your guys' opinions on what you think of the series, as well as other comedies that you think come close to Konosuba or might be better than Konosuba. I think overall, when factoring different aspects of the show such as the art, animation, sound, and overall enjoyment, I'll have to rate this series a 9.5 out of 10. So now that I've given you many recommendations that you'll surely enjoy, how do we top everything on this list? Oh yeah, how could I ever forget such a masterpiece?
What's going on?
If you haven't seen this clip already, you're probably thinking,
what the what?
Did I just actually watch? And one of my worst accomplishments in life is going to be explaining to you why you need to watch the show. Straight off the bat, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. The Monogatari series definitely has to be one of the hardest series to get into, if not the hardest. And it's likely that you've probably heard of it at some point and maybe even seen some clips, or have had it on your watch list for years because you have that annoying friend who won't shut up about how good the series is. But you never got around to sitting down and actually preparing mentally to watch the series. And I don't blame you for it. The Monogatari series is really intimidating to get into with the thousands of different recommended watch and read orders, the amount of seasons the series has in the first place, and truly being able to understand the show. I debated putting this anime on the list in the first place just because it's so hard to translate and recommend, in addition to trying to pinpoint what makes this series so great. Is it the head tilts, or the head patting, or perhaps the tongue twisters? Or maybe even the choreography? So explaining all of these elements that make the show more than unique is a very hard task, especially when factoring that people overseas don't speak the Japanese language.
It's so cool! Son of a bitch!
And that the Monogatari series has a lot of hidden meanings. For that same reason, I'll be keeping this recommendation relatively short, as there's only so much I can say before I get carried away and make the script way too long. So I'm gonna do my job and cut everything into the little bite-sized pieces that are as easily digestible as I can make it. There's nothing like the Monogatari series. It's just so out there and weird and all over the place. So I came to the conclusion after rewatching the show multiple times that the enjoyment factor of the show is different for every individual as well as on every rewatch, as I feel Monogatari pushes the limits on showcasing the typical elements that make an anime with its experimental storytelling, art and animation direction, character dialogues, and many other factors in the show that are not all just really exciting to take in but actually executed very well. Which is also why its rewatch potential is very high, giving the viewer something new to appreciate about it every single watch. I believe that the Monogatari series is anime at its most artistic and creative. As a series, it pushes the medium beyond conventional storytelling, and instead contains compelling conversations that drive plot. It's heavily dialogue based as it follows the light novel very closely, which is why, by the way, the transition scenes you see in the actual anime are there in the first place. They're ripped directly from the light novel. You'll also often see the characters breaking the fourth wall, addressing the viewers with knowledge only the viewers are supposed to have. The series is also filled with references to other animes, Western and Japanese media, and history. So many references, it's hard to know them all. And one of the main factors I personally think makes the series so great is the wordplay on the Japanese language from the genius author Nishio Isen? Whatever. Anyways, there's just so much wordplay within the series that require extensive knowledge of the Japanese language to be able to fully grasp a lot of its hidden meanings throughout the show. For example, every single season of the series is a wordplay on two words, the theme of the season and the word monogatari. Let's take the first season for example, Bakemonogatari, with the theme being monsters, or bakemono, and monogatari, which translates to story. Thus, bake and mono put together doesn't necessarily translate directly to anything, but the viewer can assume that it means monster story. Although that doesn't go to say that you can't enjoy the show without understanding some of these elements. The series' plot is actually fairly simple yet entertaining. It's a combination of character arcs with supernatural elements all connected to our main character, Koyomi Araragi. Araragi is the focal point in which we see everything happen. He's a pseudo-vampire and human who always finds himself helping others deal with their problems. He encounters a series of oddities that all represent the problems that lead our different characters' personalities. I would say the show is a deconstruction of a harem anime, mainly because it smartly illustrates how the characters come to be their stereotypical archetypes, and what it would actually take for them to act like they do. Senjo Gahara, one of our main characters, when first appearing on the show, comes off as a tsundere who has a cold and sweet side as she starts to warm up to Araragi. She has that hard outer shell and is hard to actually get close to, thus her oddity being a crab. Hanekawa is Araragi's childhood friend. She's portrayed as a perfect character that knows everything, even though she actually has a very tough life with constant stress building up all the time. She takes out her stress as she feigns innocence, thus her oddity being a cat. I won't go into the other characters as I want you to have that experience yourself, discovering their different character traits, but you get the point. Finally, with the addition of this out-of-this-world stylistic and experimental art and animation complementing the show's other shining elements, there's no wonder why the show has such a massive following. I could also literally just dedicate another entire video for Monogatari's soundtracks and opening and ending sequences just because of how legendary they are. So with that, I'd probably rate Monogatari an easy 10 out of 10. And hopefully I convinced someone to watch this show, as I guess I'll spill the beans now. This was actually just all a plot to get you guys to watch the toothbrush scene. Hey guys, it's Miku here. Hopefully you all enjoyed that video. It took a lot of time and effort for that one, perhaps maybe a bit too much, but I'm looking forward to bringing you guys more great content, and hopefully the editing gets better as I release more and more. And if you end up watching or liking or disliking any of the recommendations I suggested in this video, please let me know why in the comments below. And yeah, thanks for staying all the way through, and I'll see you on the next one.
言葉にすれば消えちゃう関係なら言葉を消せば嫌って思ってた恐れてたってけどあれなんか違うかも千里も道も一歩